In the interest of time, Matt, if you want to go ahead and present.
Yes, sir. I know we don't have a lot of time, and I don't come before you often, but there's some things you need to know. I'm going to just hit some highlights. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and hopefully add some credibility to what I have to tell you. Subcommittee Chairman Carpenter, members that are present, thank you for being here. I see Chairman Tanner over there also. I'm glad he is here because this issue is important. This issue doesn't just affect railroad workers or workers in general. It affects the state. It's an issue of public safety. It's an issue that could save a life. I'm a railroad conductor by trade, 19 years seniority, starting in Savannah, Georgia. I've worked thousands of miles across the Southeast. I've seen things that you would not believe. I serve today as a Georgia Legislative Director for Smart Transportation Division, which is a labor organization which represents thousands of railroad workers and retirees, thousands in the state, and many, many more across the country. In addition to lobbying, when I'm not here, I'm an appointed member of the Association of American Railroad Safety Appliance Task Force. What that is a group of a think tank where you have people from railroad companies, ergonomics experts, rail car manufacturers, and we look at ways to make the equipment safer for employees and customers. When a tank car or a box car goes into a chip mill or a facility to be loaded, you have people climbing all over it. It needs to be safe. I've been around that stuff. I've seen accidents. Another thing that I do that adds to my insight into rail safety and the importance of it and how dangerous it can be is I'm a member of the NTSB National Transportation Safety Board investigative team. Just this December, I was in Estill, South Carolina, where a CSX freight train crew from Savannah, Georgia, ran over a welder who was welding in the track. During the legislative session last year, during February, I was called from the session, missed about 10 days because I was in Casey, South Carolina, a suburb of Columbia, where an Amtrak train and a CSX freight train had a head-on collision, killed 2 people, injured 100-something passengers, did millions of dollars of damage. One of the crew members on Amtrak, the engineer, was one of our own. He lived in Richmond Hill, Georgia. I actually trained him in 2002 as a conductor on CSX. I knew him personally, and I had to go dig through the rubble of what was behind after this preventable collision happened. So when I talk about safety, you hear all this other side stuff coming in. I'm coming at you from personal experience. It's real to me, and especially when something is preventable. HB 190 is a preventative measure. It can, and the state should enact it to avoid a tragedy. It could save a life. It's really simple. It's common sense. That's what I've heard from 90% of the people I talk to. Well, I thought there was 5 people on the train. 4? There's only 2 people up there and they want to go to 1? Are you crazy? Well, no, but that's the reality of it. And so you need to know. There's 2 people up there. 1 person can't do the job. There's no technology out there today that can do the job of both of those people maybe 100 years from now, but we're talking about 2019, 2025, 2030. It's not there. Another thing HB 190 would do was put an AED in the locomotive cab. When you operate a train, you're in a mobile workplace. You're not working near a shop. You're going from A to B. You might be going from Savannah, Georgia to Waycross, Georgia, through a swamp, through a farm. There's nobody around you, no way for a car or an ambulance to get to you. If something happens to your coworker, you're dead. Period. A $500 AED doesn't seem like a big ask, especially when all this other money can be invested in cameras to watch every move we make. You can't spend $500 to put a piece of equipment that might save my life. It really doesn't make sense to me why anybody would contest that. They're in every office building. The other thing is about the 2-person crew and whether states should regulate it or not. Despite what you might have heard, mistruths that have been told, states have explicit authority to regulate railroad safety and have done so on multiple occasions to cover a variety of shortfalls left in federal code. The states of Arizona, Wisconsin, West Virginia, California all have train crew size laws that no less than a minimum of 2. Some as far back as 1992, 27 years. No veto, no override. That's been the law of the land for 27 years. Just this week in Colorado, similar legislation as this passed, both chambers. It's sitting on the governor's desk, and he is expected to sign it. because while he was in Congress, he was an advocate for public safety. And he's committed to signing this legislation. So that's 5 states, it's already law. You know, Georgia has the power to fill the gap, and it's been stated case after case where federal law does not cover. If federal law later on down the road comes up with a law, a train crew size law, as they did in Canada after 47 people were killed with a crude oil train because it was operated by one person, if they decide to do that, which they should, but they haven't yet, if they decide to do that, then at that time, that can override state law. But they haven't done it yet, and they're not doing it tomorrow. Georgia needs to act today. Another mistruth about this bill is that it's a labor bill. Let's clear that up. Yes, thousands of railroad workers like myself who work in the industry day and night, who know the industry like nobody else, who live it, breathe it, depend on it, who drive ungodly amounts of chemicals through your backyard. Yes, we support it. So I guess that makes it a labor bill. But who also supports it are policemen and EMS and anybody really that you talk to really supports it, except for the people who would have to pay a little bit extra money to keep one job on, a job that has plenty of duties. It's not just a passenger. It's a threat to the safety of our citizens, and honestly, to me, it's a slap in the face that a railroad would even consider running trains that are miles long, carrying millions of tons of explosive, destructive chemicals through your town with only one person on board. You know, block crossings, fatigue. We work all hours of the night. We're always on call. Hazardous chemicals, train securement, national security. You know, national security is a threat. Think about when the trains come through downtown Atlanta under the Super Bowl. What could happen? When you have 4 eyes, you have 2 people alert, doing their job. They can see things that a satellite's not going to see. You know, I'm sure everybody in here has been blocked at a road crossing. However, whatever the length of time you've been blocked, whether it be 10 minutes or half an hour, you take that conductor or whatever person off that train, you can magnify that by 100. Because the engineer can't go back and manually separate that crossing. If he goes back there to go to the crossing, nobody's at the controls to move the locomotive. All he can do is radio in and wait for an over-the-road truck to come manually split that. And you know, what really is troubling is it might, you know, it's bad enough being delayed to go to work or to school, but what if that's an ambulance? And, you know, that sounds trivial. It really does. Until the person in that ambulance is a family member, and that's the direct route to the hospital. That's when this stuff hits home. And it's real, and it happens. The freight industry is growing. It's huge. It's amazing. I love the expansion of the Savannah port. I hope more freight comes. I'll buy stuff on Amazon 3 times a day. Bring it on. But with that, instead of more trains coming out of the Savannah port, which we have more, we're seeing stuff across the country where trains are getting longer. The longer a train is, for those that don't work in the industry, the longer the train is, the harder it is to operate. So when you take a train that's normally 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 feet, a little over a mile, you increase that to 2 miles. The longer a train is, the heavier it is, the harder it is to operate. The more they tear apart, the more the rear end device that replaced that caboose you talked about, there's a little electronic device, it communicates with the engine, the locomotive. The further away it is, like a walkie-talkie, it don't work. When it don't work, the train stops. You can't help where the train stops. It might be in a town with 4 crossings, and you've got them all blocked. You got one fella up there, all he can do is pray. Radio in and pray while that community suffers.
Can we ask for questions just for expedience? Are you cool with that?
I'd love to take questions, or I can talk till midnight.
All right, let's go to Pat at 20.